I think, as your reporter just said, that the ultimate aim, of course, is to move to more EVs going forward. But Southeast Asia's got a long way to go for that. The infrastructure is not there across much of the region. So in the interim, we've got to look at ways of reducing the carbon footprint of existing vehicles. But we actually believe that over the next 15 years, internal combustion engine, petrol, diesel, will still account for over 80% of vehicle sales in Southeast Asia. And that means in the meantime, we've got to try and promote technology which can reduce carbon emissions. And that means improving on fuel efficiency, and it means improving on emission standards. And by doing so, we think Southeast Asia then can be in a position where it can still exploit export markets like to Europe, like to Australia, or to New Zealand, or the US, which are looking to lower their emissions coming out from their cars.
And Chris, do you have any indication as to why Southeast Asia has been lagging? I mean, we talk about China just moving ahead at full speed in electric vehicle development. They have been for years, but it's really taking off now, especially with the domestic players. I mean, what is behind Southeast Asia when it comes to just lagging in this effort?
Well, a lot of it's down to infrastructure. Electric vehicles need charging points. So at least here in Singapore at the moment, they have come up with their SG Green Plan, and that involves a doubling of the number of electrical charging points for cars. But that's not nearly enough if you want to move to a majority EV fleet going forward. The rest of the region is a long way behind the curve on this. Part of it is down to cost. Part of it is down to they've got existing manufacturing centres in Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam, and Indonesia, where they're making internal combustion engine cars, and they've got to convert those factories over to EVs, and that takes time.
It takes time, and it also takes money. So for those manufacturers, I mean, they probably want some guarantee that those cars will sell. We've seen this as an impediment to development before in places like the US even. So I just wonder, I mean, do you see this initiative being led from the public side and the governments involved, or do we need this public-private partnership working together?
It absolutely needs a public-private partnership for this. We need the manufacturers to say, look, this is the way we're going, and it clearly is the way they're all going, whether it's European manufacturers or Americans or Japanese or Chinese, they're all heading down the EV route. But we also then need governments to make sure they're putting in place the right policies to support that, putting in place the right infrastructure to support that, and then the public needs to be educated, and the public needs to be incentivized for it as well.
And European manufacturers have obviously taken a big interest in their electric vehicle sales in China being their largest market in many regards. I know we just talked about Volkswagen there with our correspondent Phil LeBeau, but it's not just Volkswagen. I mean, all of the major European automakers are eyeing China for their EV developments. And do you think that same level of interest is here for Southeast Asia? Because it almost makes me wonder, as China's own domestic players step up their EV game, whether or not the competition is going to be even more fierce here.
Well, the competition is already fierce here in the automotive sector. The Japanese have a huge presence. The Europeans are building their presence out even more. And that competition, I think, will continue around the EV area as well. You've got to remember, for the European manufacturers, a lot of this is being driven by European domestic policy. Countries in Europe are saying we're going to phase out the internal combustion engine by certain dates. And those dates actually are coming very rapidly down the line. So a lot of the European manufacturers are saying we are going to switch to a complete EV fleet in the next 10, 15, 20 years. And that means even for their overseas manufacturing here in Southeast Asia, that will happen the same, which is why we need governments now to be putting in place the right measures to support that, and in the interim, the transition through better, lower carbon technology.